Welcome to video number 5, which will focus on pronouns, the noun substitutes. In defining pronouns, we say that we use pronouns in place of nouns to speed up communication, to make our sentences streamlined. We can see this effect if we consider a sentence such as, Maria asked Marcos for his notes. So Marco showed his notes to Maria. Here we are only using nouns, and so it makes the sentence appear simplistic. You can see the impact of pronouns if we say Maria asked Marco for his notes, so he showed them to her. And in this sentence, the point gets across faster, and we don't need to repeat Maria, Marcos, and notes because we are substituting them with pronouns. I divide pronouns into 4 groups. The pronouns that are always subjects, there are 6 of them. The pronouns that are always objects, there are 16 of those. The pronouns that can be either subject pronouns or object pronouns, there are 27 of those. And a 4th group, pronouns that can be either subjects, objects, or adjectives. To begin with then, these are the 6 pronouns that are always subjects. I, he, she, we, they, and who. Now, subject pronouns often carry out the actions of verbs. And I can show you this in 4 sentences that I included in my book, A Blueprint for Sentence Variety. The first sentence is, I know that Irene and Carlos deserve most of the credit for the success of this project. She did most of the engineering and he took care of the building details. The third sentence says, but we must also remember that the project would never have been completed if the investors had not provided the necessary funding. They were the ones who actually made the project possible. So you can see that these pronouns are subjects, and it is practically impossible to use them in a sentence and not to use them with a verb. There is, in fact, only one exception. There's only one exception, and I'd like to show it to you. When people answer their phone and someone says, for example, hello, is Robert there? It is polite, it is customary for the person, if it is the person answering, to say, this is he. This is he. Or if it is a woman and someone says, hi, I'm trying to reach Janet Jones, and if it is Janet on the phone, she can say, this is she. In these 2 examples, he and she are being used as objects because they're coming after the verb. The pronoun this is the subject. And so this is the only exception when we use subject pronouns as objects. There's another instance that I'd like to show you which is not correct. We call it hypercorrection. And that is when individuals want to use subject pronouns because they want to appear as using correct English or correct grammar. And so somebody might say, the doctor would like to talk to you and I. And it's actually not correct, because the correct thing would be to say, the doctor would like to talk to you and me. And there's nothing wrong with using me. That is the correct form. Our boss promoted she and I is also an example of hypercorrection. The correct form would be to say, our boss promoted her and me. He promoted her and me. And there's nothing wrong with using her and me. This is the appropriate place after the verb to use object pronouns. Very good. So now I'd like to show you the 16 pronouns that are always objects. And I put an asterisk after her because this is a word that can also be used as an adjective. We often use it as an adjective. If we say something like, her appointment is at 2:30 p.m. And so I wanted to indicate that. So these words cannot be used as subjects of verbs. However, they have a very important function in being used in four different places. They have a very important function in being used after verbs. If we say, we saw her yesterday, we saw them, we saw each other. So object pronouns are very important because we can also use them after prepositions. They talk to each other often. They talk to them. They talk to one another. After prepositions, we use object pronouns. We do not use subject pronouns. We do not say they talk to they. No. They talk to we. They talk to he. That would be incorrect. We use object pronouns after a preposition. And we also use object pronouns after a gerund, which is an ing noun, as we discussed in video number 1. So if we say pleasing her or teaching her is one of his priorities, we would not say pleasing she, pleasing he, pleasing they. That would be incorrect. What we use after a gerund is the object pronoun. And so you can see that object pronouns are important. We also use them after infinitive verbs. If we say, for example, our number one goal is to keep ourselves healthy. Infinitive verbs, 99% of the time, have the word to. To keep, to give, to work, to help. So after the infinitive, we don't say to keep we, to keep I, to keep he. No, we use him, us, ourselves after an infinitive verb. So infinitive verbs cannot be used as subjects, but they can be used as objects after verbs, after prepositions, after gerunds, and after infinitive verbs. So they have a very important role to play. Very good. So let's look at now at the 27 pronouns that are that can function as either subject pronouns or object pronouns. Here's half of them. You, it, who, whoever, what, whatever, which, whichever, nobody, anybody, somebody, everybody. And here are the rest of them. No one, anyone, someone, another, others, none, nothing, anything, something, everything, mine, ours, yours, hers, theirs. These words can be subjects with verbs. No one can see because of the fog. That's as a subject. As an object, we saw no one in the room. And so these pronouns are flexible. They can be both subject and object pronouns. And I have 4 examples to show you. Beginning with the pronoun you. If I say, you surprised me, I'm using you as a subject. If I say, I'll see you tomorrow, I'm using you as an object after the verb will see. If we say, it never ceases to surprise me, it is being used as an object. If we say, we saw it at Costco, it is being used as an object after the verb saw. The subject is we. And if somebody asks, what happened? What would be used as a subject with the verb happen. But if somebody asks, what have you done? What is an object? Even though it comes at the beginning of the question, because the subject is you. If I change the question a little bit and say, you have done what? You have done what? Then you can see what would be at the end. You have done what? And it would be more clearly seen as an object. If we say, whatever happens, we'll understand. Whatever is the subject with the verb happens. But if we say, we want whatever you want, this is the subject of this verb, this is the subject of this verb, and we have whatever being used as an object. Now, there are 16 words that can be used in 3 different ways: as object pronouns, as subject pronouns, or as adjectives. And here they are. I put them in black because they can be adjectives, not just pronouns. And so most of these we use them as adjectives perhaps more often, but they can be pronouns. And I like to show you three examples, beginning with the word both. Both. Here is both in the way that we use it more often. If we say both cars were badly damaged in the crash. So both is describing cars. And this is the way perhaps that we are used to hearing the word being used. However, if I say, I'll take both, then I'm using both to refer to the 2 things that I want to take. And so I'm using both as an object pronoun. And if I say, both of them do a great job, I may be referring to 2 employees or 2 machines, but I'm using both to represent those 2 nouns. And so I'm using both here as a subject pronoun with the verb do. The next example deals with the word his. Again, we use his perhaps more often as an adjective. His approach, his job, his wife, so his children. So this is the more common use of his. However, we can also use it as a pronoun. If we say, my approach is to say no comment. His, meaning his approach, his, on the other hand, is to provide long explanations. And so his is representing approach, and is being used as a subject pronoun, subject of the verb is. Here, it is being used as an object pronoun. My approach is simpler and shorter, so don't expect me to change to his after the preposition. Okay, so again, his is representing approach, his approach. But here, it is being used as an object pronoun because it comes after the preposition to. The third example is with the word more. Again, this is probably the more common use of more as an adjective. If we say, for example, more and more viewers are turning away from commercials. More and more are describing viewers. But the word can be used as a pronoun. For example, if I say more is better sometimes, more is being used as a pronoun, subject of the verb is. And if I say she'd rather have more than less, then I'm using more as an object pronoun, and in fact, less is also being used as an object pronoun. Okay, so they are not as common. We don't use them as frequently, but they can be used as pronouns, and you will see them in newspaper articles, in magazine articles, and in compositions. Very good. So before I sum up, I'd like to introduce you to a word I call the chameleon, because it can appear in sentences not only as a subject pronoun and as an object pronoun and as an adjective, but also as a subordinating conjunction in 4 different ways. And that word is the word that. That. If I say, for example, that is simply not true. That, I'm using it as a pronoun representing whatever it is that I believe is not true. And so here I'm using that as a subject pronoun. If I ask, do you agree with that? Then I am using that as a pronoun, but now as an object pronoun. The verb is do agree, and the subject is you. And so here I'm using that as an object pronoun. If I say that president doesn't really care about this country, I'm using that as an adjective to identify which president, that president. And so this is a third use of the word that. And if I say, he says that the newspapers and televised news programs are the enemy of the people. In this sentence, there are 2 clauses, 2 groups of words that have a subject and a verb. The first clause is actually made up of 2 words. He says. The second clause has 2 subjects, newspapers and programs. The verb is are. These 2 clauses are being connected by the word that, which is functioning here as a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction. No other word can function in 4 different ways. So the word that is a very, very special word. And because of the different ways in which it can be used, I call it the chameleon. All right, so I would like you now to take a second quick look at the 68 pronouns that I have shown you here. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we use pronouns because they make communication quicker, tighter, more streamlined. And so they're very, very helpful. If we didn't use them, we would have to rely entirely on nouns. And our sentences, when we would talk or write, they would be cumbersome without the use of pronouns. So the challenge for us then is to know which pronouns are always subject pronouns. The challenge for us is to identify the pronouns that are always object pronouns and the pronouns that can be either subject pronouns or object pronouns, and also the pronouns that can function as subject pronouns, object pronouns, or as adjectives. This is what we must do in order to use pronouns effectively. Okay, so now that we have gone through 5 videos and we have discussed object nouns, subject nouns, verbs, object pronouns, and subject pronouns, in video 6 you will see groups of students competing to identify all of these components in a newspaper article. Thank you.